Hello everyone, thank you for joining us in this edition of The Insight. I am Babla Jonathan. Today, we are taking a critical look into the sufferings of the people in the crisis-stricken northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon for over 8 years. Today, violence has been raging. Soldiers, civilians killed, kidnappings going on, destruction of properties. Many have been forced out of their homes. Sources of livelihood have been destroyed. Businesses crumbled. Life has become a bitter pill, just too difficult to swallow for many inhabitants of the two predominantly English-speaking regions. To others, life has become more or less a nightmare of uncertainty, fear, frustration, and misery. A similar situation prevails in the far north region of Cameroon, where Boko Haram terrorists have been raining terror on villages, notably those close to the border with neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria, killing people and animals, destroying properties, looting homes, and inflicting terror on the people. In the most recent incidents recorded within the context of the Boko Haram insurgency during an attack in a locality known as Wuklo in Borno State, Federal Republic of Nigeria, in the northeast of the country, at least 10 Cameroonian soldiers were killed, plus the sufferings of the people from north to south, east to west of the Republic of Cameroon. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is the Archbishop of Bamenda, the President of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon. His Grace, Nkea. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Babila.
Let's begin by having your comments on the most recent incident, one of the most recent incidents recorded within the context of the Boko Haram insurgency in the far north, or in the Lake Chad Basin, generally speaking, during an attack in the locality of Wuklo in the northeast of the country, in Borno State precisely. At least 10 Cameroonian soldiers were killed.
I think it's a pity that these soldiers were killed, and the Boko Haram insurgents has brought untold misery, added misery to the people of the north region of Cameroon, to the far north region. And you see, one of the things people don't understand most of the time, they talk about soldiers as if they were made of wood and iron. These soldiers have parents. These soldiers have brothers and sisters. These soldiers have wives and children. And therefore, the death of a soldier has ramifications upon other human individuals whose lives will remain miserable because they lost their father, because they lost their son, or they lost their brother. And therefore, it's always very painful to hear this. The government has been doing a lot to fight this Boko Haram. And I remember one of the ministers of territorial administration who came to Buea to install the new governor. I can even quote it. It was the time of Excellency Samson Namenam. He came to install Acham Peter Cho as the governor to take over from Oben Peter Ashu. And during that installation ceremony, I was present. He said to the governor who was coming in, "You must be extra vigilant, especially when there is peace." So we cannot sleep on this problem. We kind of started thinking that Boko Haram problem was going down, and then this suddenly happened, which brings us back to this problem that our forces of law and order have to be extra vigilant, especially when there is apparent peace. You don't know what the enemy is planning. So my condolences to the families of these 10 soldiers, and we keep them in our prayers.
The Boko Haram militants have been inflicting terror, destruction upon inhabitants of several villages, especially those along the border with neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria, where the terrorists have been killing people, killing animals, burning down homes, destroying properties, looting houses, and forcing many to move away from their areas of residence, forcing many out of their homes into refugee camps. What is your take on this whole thing?
Terrorism is condemned worldwide. Terrorism is a very, very negative activity within any society. And the Boko Haram terrorists have a philosophy which is very, very alien to human growth and development. And to come in the way they are coming in to cause untold misery on the people is a very, very negative thing on our society. And it's only to call on the powers that be to continue making the effort that they are doing already to ensure that these renegades stop all the activities that they are renting against our people up there in the north, far north of Cameroon. People have a right to live anywhere in their country. And these insurgents are coming in and causing all these problems on our people. It is very unfortunate. And we just hope that the powers that be will continue doing everything within their powers to resist these Boko Haram forces and keep them out of our country so that our people can enjoy the peace that they deserve and they can continue with their normal activities in optimal security.
Right, from the Boko Haram insurgency, which is an external threat to an internal security issue in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, since late 2016, the situation has been very much volatile, very much difficult for the inhabitants of these two regions. And you have your ears on the ground in these two regions, and you have information coming to you as the head of the National Episcopal Conference. What is the actual situation on the ground?
I think this is a very touching topic because I have been on the ground since the beginning of this crisis. And you know that the armed aspect of the crisis started in Mamfe. And at the time, I was Bishop of Mamfe. And I witnessed a lot of suffering of our people. Men and women escaping, some carrying their children, some lost their children in the escape. And I even followed to Nigeria in the refugee camps. Not all of them were in the camps. I went to Amana, and just a kilometer or two from Obudu. And our people were sleeping under bridges in abandoned houses with nothing to eat. So I've seen the suffering from the very, very beginning. I remember when the fighting started in Kembong. I went to Kembong village where many houses had been burnt down. And there was a young man lying there who had been shot, and dogs were feeding from his corpse. And the only thing I could do at the time was take a stone and throw at those dogs to disappear for the time that we were there. And later on I called the DO of a Yumujok subdivision to inform him that this is what was happening. Could they ask the mayor to go and take the corpse and bury, you know? So I have seen the suffering of our people from the very beginning. And although things are getting better socially, but the crisis is very far from being over. If you look now, many of our roads are still impassable in the sense of insecurity. There are some roads we cannot use in the northwest. There are some roads we use with a lot of difficulties. I'm not talking about the state of the road, I'm talking about the security of the roads. And this has slowed down the economic life of the people. While people from Bamenda are running away to Douala and Yaoundé, people from the hinterlands are running into Bamenda. And therefore, we have we still have IDPs hanging around. People have seen untold suffering in other places they escaped to. But the big difficulty is that some of these people will not even come back, because where they have gone, they have settled well, and the suffering they have left here in the northwest and southwest region, they don't even want to come back anymore.
You said there is some improvement, socially speaking. Tell us more about that.
Yes, socially speaking, if you see now, the emphasis on no schools is no longer very strong. And therefore, many children have gone back to school. You can see now businesses opening and a bit of social life returning. Before, in Bamenda, at 5:30, maximum 6, everybody is rushing into their houses to lock the doors. But now, if you go to T Junction, if you go to Mile 3 in Kwen, and some other aspects, some other localities here in Bamenda, even 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you still see people drinking and eating roasted fish. This is something we could never see the last 4 years ago. You could not see this 3, 4 years ago. And even from my room, I can gauge the temperature, the social temperature of the town, because over weekends, when there are kraidas, all these funeral mournings and rites, you can hear Mbagalum being played even from Chomba or from Batu. I'll hear the sound coming right up through here to Mankon. Then we know that social life is coming back. But this doesn't mean that the crisis is over.
The situation remains volatile, is that?
Very tense. And anything can happen at any time. Very, very volatile.
With this improvement that you're talking about, can we see there is a sign of light at the end of the tunnel?
I have made this distinction before. Returning of life does not explain the end of the crisis. The fact that people are coming back, the fact that schools are going on, the fact that shops are opening more and more, the fact that people are beginning to celebrate funerals, more marriages openly and go right into the night, does not explain the end of the crisis. It is simply telling us that either people are getting used to the crisis, or there is an uneasy detente. There is an uneasy calm. And we don't know what can happen at any time. A lot has gone on, and we have to be able to make this distinction. Let us not be deceived by social life returning to our communities and interpret that as the end of the crisis. This is a very important distinction that I have to make.
About the issue of ghost town imposed by pro-independence fighters every Monday, is it still effective here in Bamenda across the regions?
I was in Boya with the bishops for the seminar of the bishops of the National Episcopal Conference in January. And we found things very ordinary on Monday, because we had our normal meetings, we went out visiting and all that. And in the southwest, it's a little different. In Boya particularly. Maybe in the hinterlands of the southwest, it is still effective. In Bamenda, it is still observed. But the rigidity has also relaxed. And I must be able to say to you with all honesty that ghost towns make absolutely no sense. Ghost towns make absolutely no sense because it's not punishing government. It's punishing the people who are on the ground. Now on Mondays, people cannot travel. shops cannot open, children cannot go to school, people cannot circulate freely. But if you go to station where the government offices are, those offices are open. So who is suffering? It is the ordinary people who are suffering. So as someone who has been in this crisis from the beginning until now, I think that those who are organizing these ghost towns and calling for them to continue should relax, because the people have seen too much suffering. Ghost towns calling of ghost towns is an additional suffering on the people who are on the ground. And I think that it should be relaxed.
In a recent interview with a senior colleague, Bonimoa, you highlighted a very disturbing situation about the challenges that the people are facing because of the insecurity prevailing. And earlier you talked about the difficulties of moving from one part of the region to another, some roads that are not usable. And you highlighted notably the case of the Bamenda Womb Road. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, as a pastor, I move around the region quite often. And insecurity does not stop us from doing our pastoral work, because the life we have chosen is one that anywhere death meets you, you just go. And this is what is motivating us to be going around. I can say that I'm one of the only few people who can move around. It is not because it is easy. It is not because I have an understanding with anybody. But it is because I know that at any point in time, my life and my blood can be spilled out for the sake of my people. But I will not try to preserve my life and let my people suffer. And therefore, I've been going around. And one of the things I would like to say to you here is that, when we go around, we evaluate a lot of things. I mentioned to your colleague, your senior colleague, Mr. Bonimoa, because he asked me about the road to Womb. I explained this in Womb when I reached Womb. I said the road from my house here, where you and me are sitting, to the parish house in Womb is 68 kilometers. 68. But you cannot do this in less than 4 hours. It's unimaginable that you do 68 kilometers in 4 hours. I'm saying not less than 4 hours, which means that it could be 5 or 6 or 7. And my parish priest of Holy Trinity Womb will tell you that he has slept on the road many times. They leave and they start going and they get stuck on the way and they cannot reach Womb and they sleep on the road.
What makes the journey so long?
The roads are horrible. The roads are impassable and impossible. So when you go, you cannot drive more than 30 kilometers an hour, because they are all gullies and trenches and all kinds of things. I don't think that road has been well touched for the past couple of years. And every rainy season comes and the dry season comes, and we have to manage with the road as it is like that. And it is very bad. That is not the only road we are crying about. If you live here to go to Mbengwi, for example, the road to Mbengwi is impossible. But when you go to Mbengwi, now the boys for the past 4 years announced that nobody should use the road to Mbengwi. Till you and me are sitting like this, the main road to Mbengwi is blocked. Not that there is any block there, but instructions have been passed out that nobody uses that road and nobody is using it. When we go to Mbengwi, we go to Bali and enter the bush from Bali, pass through people's farms and come out somewhere there in Gembo and then go down to Mbengwi. And those roads we are using in the bush are horrible, horrible, impossible roads. Last 3 days ago, I was in Ndop. From Sabga to Ndop. That too is another nightmare. So what are we talking about? So it is not just the matter of the road to Womb. Some of the major roads which our people use is impossible. And These are not things that anybody is quarreling. You can go and verify.
And because of the insecurity, it is definitely difficult to go walking there. I mean, grading the road, improving on the state of the road.
You see, one of the things the government has the onus to do is to take their responsibility. Not to do the road because of insecurity is to say that they have surrendered to the separatists. You cannot surrender when you are in charge of the country. Do the roads. That shows that you are in charge. If you are no longer in charge, then what are you doing there?
Some contractors have seen their equipments burned.
Yes, that is because contractors go into the field without making adequate negotiation with security. Contractors cannot function independent of state security. State security should protect those contractors who are doing those works. And if they don't see the state security to guarantee that, then they are in problems. It can be done, Mr. Babila.
All right, tell us about the cost.
From Bamenda to Womb is 20,000. From Womb back to Bamenda is another 20,000. Therefore, 40,000 per person for a trip to and fro. If you cannot, and you don't want to, you look for somebody and double on the bike. And in that way, both of you pay 10,000. But imagine the inconvenience of jumping in those holes and in those trenches with another person on the bike. It is not an easy thing. That is very, very difficult. There was a little discussion the other day and a controversy about what the moderator said during the Grand National Dialogue Follow-up Committee meeting to the Minister of Public Works about the Benakuma, Balin, Bauru, Akwaya, Nigeria Highway, Nigeria Road. You see, one of the things about this is that we are on the field. You cannot sit in Yaoundé and you understand what is happening in Bauru. I know Bauru, I've been to Bauru many times. The problem is that we cannot also rely on people, interested parties. If the Minister of Public Works calls me and says, Bishop, just check if the road Benakuma, Bauru, Balin, Akwaya, Nigeria is done, I'll give him the result in 5 minutes. And it will be exact. It will be exact. So to depend on information that can be truncated does not help our country. I don't know whether this is true. We are still verifying that for the past years, every year, a contractor is taking the contract to do the road to Womb. The man should be arrested because I can testify that the road to Womb has not been touched. Ask the military men in Womb will tell you that from time to time, they are the ones who go around scraping the mud and the stones to make it possible for them to pass even with their own military vehicles. And then we, the civilians, will profit from that. The road is not done.
What is the state of that road?
The road is as bad itself. I can say this to you. I have a police station in Benakuma. They have done, between Befang and Benakuma, there's a little kind of grading going on within this last week. But from Bauru, going up, cross the Katsina Ala, and going up to Balin, there is nothing happening there. When you go to Balin, you climb up to Mavas. Absolutely nothing. The road is as bad itself. And if somebody has taken money for that road, the person should be held accountable.
Let's proceed to get into some of the issues that your Christians tell you when you go visiting them in those red zones, in those difficult areas. What do they tell you about their challenges, their sufferings?
To be honest with you, the biggest challenge they are facing now in some of the areas is the separatists. They are the separatist fighters. Some of the separatist fighters are causing untold harm on our population. Look at what happened in Babanki, Big Babanki, Kejamkeku, the other time. That these boys arrested women of 60, 70, 80 years and whip them on their buttocks. Where have you ever heard that kind of thing? And they think that they'll do this and go free from karma, the law of justice and nature. How do you beat their mother? And you ask the people to pay 10,000, men 10,000, women 5,000. And now even the liberation tax that they have imposed on the people. Where do they expect the people to get this money? With ghost towns, with lockdowns, and the impossibility of moving goods from one town to the other. How do the people generate this kind of money? So untold suffering has been caused by our own very children who claim that they want to liberate us, but now they're the ones who have enslaved us. Secondly, the people always cry about immobility. Moving from place to place is not easy. And we say it. My own work as a pastor is to be on the side of truth. It doesn't matter who truth favors. And that is why I'm saying that when you look at this mobility situation, it is not easy to move from here to Kumbu. Many times, either the Bishop of Kumbu or his priest or religious and the civilians have had to pass through Fumban to Bafusam and then to come to Bamenda. So they do a journey of 2 hours in 6 or 7 hours. This is not caused by the military. This is caused by the boys. They are escaping from the boys, not from the military. And therefore, we must be able to say what is there. They should let the people free. Allow the people to travel. They should stop taking people to the bush. And one of the things I said very clearly is also that nobody is a blackleg. People have their opinions. My opinion must not be the same with yours. And if my opinion does not correspond to your opinion, why do you call me a blackleg? I have a right to my opinion. You also have a right to your opinion. I respect your opinion. You respect my own. When you start calling me blackleg, you put yourself in a superior position over me, and then you take my life. This is what has been happening. People have lost their lives. They have lost their loved ones. And I think this is not good. And again, we get some situations where the military are extorting from the people, taking money from drivers and all those things. They cause untold hardship on our people. And this is what the people are crying about.
Military control along the roads.
Of course. Military controls along the roads are collection points, to say the least.
Collection points?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, collection points?
When you leave to go anywhere, for example, using the Womb Road, I go back there. They know how much you give at each stop. It's not hidden. I use those roads so I see what I'm saying. It's not somebody who come and tell me.
So, when the people tell you about these things, what do they tell you about their state of mind? How they feel about all these things? What they think about all these things?
This is one of the things I have been trying to talk to the authorities, the civil authorities, when I insist on dialogue. You can kill leaders of a revolution, but you cannot kill the spirit of a revolution. And therefore, while the soldiers are protecting the population and getting rid of those who are disturbing the population, they should also know that there is something called the spirit of the revolution. This can only be handled through dialogue. This can only be handled by sitting around the table. Let people come to an understanding. I'm saying this on your television. I'm saying it, I've said it before in other places, so that we should understand that what we call in metaphysics, accidentals. We are touching the accidentals, but we are not touching the essence. The essence is what makes a thing to be what it is. The accidentals are what makes those things visible or tangible. let us not be focusing on accidentals. Let us see how to tackle the essence. And this is what I'm trying to say about this crisis. There's a lot of focus on accidentals, but the essence can only be handled by sitting around and talking, no matter how, but there must be discussion.
And you've been calling for that discussion between, not the kind of discussion of the major national dialogue that brought everything and everybody on board and so on, a discussion between the government authorities and those who are fighting.
It is very important because in conflict resolution, dialogue is a discussion between the two opposing parties, the friend and an enemy. Dialogue is not a discussion among friends. What we do in the Grand National Dialogue is to have a discussion among friends. And we should, when we talk about this dialogue, it is the authorities or one party meeting the other party to discuss. This is dialogue. And this is what we have been talking about. It's not a popular opinion of dialogue in the context of this crisis which we are living, but I'm telling you, my friend, this is the way out.
Government has to call.
They must discuss.
Get those who are in detention out.
You see, Adam, now you see, one of the main things is that we should not fear dialogue. We should not fear dialogue. If I come to talk with you, I must not accept what you are saying. But starting to talk with you is already a very big step. So people fear to discuss form of government. They fear to discuss independence. They fear to discuss federation. All those things are accidentals. If we are talking about dialogue, dialogue is discussing with the other party to understand you and give you the chance to understand him. This is dialogue.
There is a former Nigerian bar president who said that, talking about the situation there, the Biafran war, and which is similar to what we are having here. He said that it is not sacrosanct. It is not written anywhere. Talking about the situation in Nigeria, it is not sacrosanct that we must be together. Because if we are together and we have these killings, we have people who are killed in this manner, then there is no essence. There is no reason for it to be.
There is also no guarantee that if you have independence, killing will stop. So this is what I'm trying to say. What we are saying is that discuss the best way of killings not happening. Whether, no matter how it is going to come, discuss the best way of killings not taking place, of harassments not taking place. This is how it is. And we should not fear the context in which those killings will not take place. The human person, my brother, stands as the center of all the activities that we do. If there is a government, it's because the human person exists. If there is a church, it's because the human person exists. If there are the international organizations, it's because the human person exists. All these institutions, civil, traditional, religious, international, they are all at the service of the human person. And therefore, any dialogue must be for the supreme good of the human person and the common good of the society.
If you were to advise government on how to go about organizing this dialogue, what will you say about the venue and maybe how it should be organized?
I must be honest with you that I've already advised. And I wouldn't want to discuss my advice in public because I hope that they are working on that advice. But I have already advised.
Right. So let's go to the newsstands now, and we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. This is the press review. We'll be right back in a moment. The Post reports the killing of at least 12 Cameroonian soldiers in a Boko Haram attack in the locality of Woglo in Borno State, in the northeast of Nigeria. And Cameroon's Ministry of Defense says the terror group is receiving external backing. The Herald Tribune puts forth the question, whose truth is true over Baworo Akwaya Road Rehabilitation Project? Goes further to report that the Minister of Public Works, Emmanuel Ganu-Jumisi, says the execution rate of the project stands at 93%, but an elite of Akwaya, the very Reverend Funke Samuel Foba, says the minister's declaration is not consistent with the reality, and the contractor charged with the execution of the project, Honorable Wallang Richard, maintains sealed lips despite the accusation of abandoning the project. Cameroon Tribune highlights dialogue between government authorities led by the Minister of Higher Education, Professor Jacques Famendongo, and teachers' trade union leaders over the grievances of teachers. According to another issue of Cameroon Tribune, the celebration of the 40th anniversary of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM, was characterized by a pre-match atmosphere, making reference to the forthcoming presidential election. The National Post exclaims, CPDM Ruby Jubilee, 40 mixed bags of fortunes. It goes further to say supporters and sympathizers of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM party, celebrated the 40th anniversary of the political outfit, March 24, with calls for the national chairman, Paul Biya, to seek re-election in the forthcoming poll. But as the party glamorously celebrated 4 decades of its dominance, its legacy remains one that raises debate and leaves many with more questions than answers. The Municipal Update reports the fortification of the CPDM Central Committee ahead of the 2025 presidential election, and the Guardian Post qualifies that as the injection of fresh blood into the CPDM through the appointment of new Central Committee members to guarantee victory in the forthcoming presidential election. The paper highlights top government officials appointed into the Central Committee of the CPDM, including the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Secondary Education, the Minister of Supreme State Audit, the Minister of Telecommunications, the Minister of Transport, the Minister of Public Service and Administrative Reforms. Another issue of the Guardian Post tells its readers that the General Manager of Cameroon Telecommunications, Camtel, has been ranked among Africa's best influential telecoms leaders. In the same vein, the paper projects a US-based Cameroonian who was featured among health professionals carrying on the legacy of the US Affordable Care Act. Nancy Elvis has been honored by the Obama Foundation for his contribution to access to healthcare. You're welcome back. We are still with our guest, His Grace, Dr. Andrew Nkea, Archbishop of Bamenda and President of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon. Your Grace.
Yes, Mr. Babila.
Suffering, misery, hardship, poverty, or I should say chronic poverty, become daily partners of a good chunk of the population of Cameroon, from north to south, east to west. This is one of the major issues that you highlighted in your message after the last seminar of bishops in Boya. What do you think is the problem?
The problem is lack of patriotism. The fact that people are holding high positions does not mean that they love the country. The love of our country calls for everybody to die to themselves so that our country may grow. If you travel like we did, the bishops went to Yokaduma for the ordination of the new Bishop of Yokaduma on the 1st of March. You discover that the road between Baturi and Yokaduma is horrible. And not to talk of from Yokaduma to Mulundu, which is another 200 kilometers. It is horrible. Is it that the roads cannot be done? Secondly, when you look at the way those people live, you see misery. When I came back, I said to some of my priests here, before you open your mouth and talk about being uncomfortable, go to the east and see the condition in which Cameroonians are living there. It is not good. And yet there is a lot of, we have a lot of minerals in this country coming from the east of Cameroon. Secondly, if you go to the far north, you go to Yagua, for example. If you go to Yagua and you travel from Yagua to Gobo, or you go from Yagua to Jigelao, or you go from Yagua to Mufudai, first of all, you are traveling just on sand, an open desert. You are not traveling on any roads. You see where the people are scooping water to drink. They drink from the same place with their cattle. How do you expect those people to be healthy? When you go, you see some places where they have created schools on paper, where the children are sitting under the trees. Thank God for a Swiss association, Asia Cameroon, that is up there trying to help build some schools, trying to help dig some wells and all that. There is suffering in the far north. There's suffering. I've been there a couple of times and I've been around the place. So it is a matter of getting the interest to help our country. We must be patriotic. We must love Cameroon. We must be able to try to develop Cameroon. And I think the second problem, which is linked, is the corruption that goes on in execution of public contracts. That if contracts are given for wells to be dug, or for boreholes to be created, or for roads to be built, that they are done selflessly, and it is followed up to ensure that those who take those contracts do what they are supposed to do. People don't love Cameroon. Most of those who have access to wealth don't love Cameroon. And yet, it is the people who are poor who have to contribute the taxes for these people who are rich to do contracts and to do whatever they want to do and to eat that money. I think that we must love our country. Cameroon is a very blessed country. Now we are preparing to go on pilgrimage to Marienburg, where the first Catholic missionaries landed in 1890, to go and pray for peace in this country and for development. But at the same time, if you listen to the head of state speech on the 31st of December, he insisted that he was going to go after all those who are corrupt, all those who are taking money of contracts and not executing, and he is going to bring them to book. We are waiting. We are waiting, because these words should match action.
Even though he has said that many times in many of his speeches, and the trend has continued upward.
We are waiting. This time he said it again, we are waiting. And I don't think I've given an interview about this. I'm giving an interview now to say that we are waiting, because it is not normal. It's not normal. Sometimes when you look at the execution of the budget of the state with regard to contracts that have been given for various things, either building of schools or doing roads, opening, it is not the problem of the government as government. It's the problem of those who are supposed to execute those things. They just take the money and sit down and nothing happens. We are saying that the suffering of the people is too much. The people are crying every day, and they are crying to us pastors. We ourselves are also crying. But those to whom we are crying should open their ears and hear the cries of the poor. The far north region, or the north of Cameroon, is very, very vast. And by the climate, by the natural indications, life is harsh to start with. And secondly, there is a lot of desert there, and this makes for a lot of dryness and difficulties to get food. The area is very vast, and I must say again that it is very thickly populated. Very, very thickly populated. When we went up there 2 years ago for our annual meeting with the bishops in Marwa, we went to Tokombere. I don't think I've seen children anywhere on earth like I saw in Tokombere. Children! When you see them as a pastor, you have one preoccupation. What do they eat? Where do they go to school? And if they are sick, where do they go to? And above all, what is their future? Where are they going to? So when we look at these things, they look difficult. But I think it will be good. I mean, I can give you some of the aspects I've looked at, but when you talk to a bishop in the north, like the Bishop of Yagwa, it's a man who was born there. He has lived there all his life. I think he can give you far more details of the suffering of his people than I'm giving you now.
Does that explain the outburst of anger that came from him recently with very much extreme words according to some persons, notably regarding the fact that he said even the devil should take over, even though he explained and we understand that he is not calling the devil to come and rule, but he's saying that anybody should take over, no matter the person.
Well, what I'm telling you is that before you condemn the Bishop of Yagwa, enter his shoes. Stand in his shoes before you understand his frustration. I mean, I don't think that any reasonable person can say, devil should come and take over our country. That's not normal. We cannot give our country to the devil. But he has said, because I've spoken to him, he didn't mean devil as devil, but he meant, as you say, some other person. But what I'm trying to say is that instead of condemning the Bishop of Yagwa, go to Yagwa and see why the bishop is making that kind of statement. Tears will drop from your eyes. Tears will drop from your eyes. We have seen children dying in that place. This Asia Cameroon I'm talking to you about is picking babies from the streets and bringing them to the health center run by the Tertiary Sisters of St. Francis. Go there and enter the orphanage before you come and ask me all these questions. Go there and see where the mothers are living with their kids before you come and ask me all these things about the Bishop of Yagwa. It's a difficult situation. He has drawn our attention to the suffering of his people. Instead of condemning him for doing so, let us see how to help him bring his people out of this misery that has pushed him to this frustration.
In the message of the bishops, the high cost of living was blamed on excessive taxation or an unfavorable taxation policy.
Things the bishops mentioned in their letter after the Boya conference was the aspect of taxation. The people of this country, the citizens, should have a strong and good relationship with their government. Their role is not to be taxed. And I think one of the biggest problems we have with our taxation system is that every year they are having a new tax code. The people cannot plan their business. Somebody should be able to sit down and plan his business for 5-10 years with all taxes included in the planning. That is very difficult. And we see taxes on everything going up. Import duties are some of the highest in Africa. The consumer bears the brunt. The people cannot pay for these commodities, and yet they have to be happy where they are. So these are some of the difficulties that we have And it is not easy for the ordinary, average Cameroonian to live and live happily.
You made some suggestions in that perspective, notably, as it is often said, that the taxation shouldn't kill the people. It should rather help the people and help the nation.
Yes, this is what we think. You know, one of the big things, some other foreign countries, just take America. Americans pay very high tax, very, very high. But the thing is that they see what their tax money is doing. So if you were paying high taxes and we're not seeing what the tax money is doing, it becomes a burden on the people. People should be able to pay their tax in a happy spirit, because they know that this tax money is going to come back to them in different forms. The social amenities, electricity, roads, water and energy, etc., health facilities. But if they are paying the tax, I'll just give you one small example. On practically all the major roads in this country, we pay toll gates. What are they meant for? Was any of those roads maintained like this, an account given to us that this is because last year we paid toll gates for 5 billion, and that 5 billion is the reason why this road is as good as it is? So people, how do you want the people to pay happily? So I think one of the things that is making taxation heavy is not just the high cost of living, is that the people are not convinced that their tax money is used enough to better their condition.
We're going to take interviews of the week now, and we'll be right back in a moment.
During the crisis, Nyasaso has gone through a lot of problems, a lot of crime waves, consumption of drugs, and we want to think that with the coming back of the chief of post and the police post back to Nyasaso, many security situations are going to be addressed.
The new police post officer will give our hands on deck for him so that he will do his job at its best, because he will be taking care of more than 28 villages. Here it means it's a big task, and he needs elements that he has to control. So we'll pray that they will send more elements.
What the SDO of Bangem, Mr. Ekema Mongamo William, has done in our village is a taboo. He cannot come to a village and appoint a chief. It is never done like that. When we even had a consultative tour on the 3rd of January with the DO, there is no family that presented him. And when the SDO came, he refused the list of kingmakers which families have sat constituted and given to the DO. He brought the very list he used in Bangem and cancelled the prefectural order, came again with that list to declare Nkea as chief. It is on that grounds that we are here today. We are talking to Secretary General. We are praying is to convey our information to the father of the region. The chieftaincy in Manyemen constitutes of 5 different families, and when you go into detail, these same 5 families, they select the kingmakers from this family to produce a chief. And from beginning, since in 1936, the first chief that was enthroned, is coming from the Jet family. So, and that is how it has been going in line.
I think the appointments are a good thing for the individuals and the party and the upcoming elections. That's how I can put it. But when Akeremona is complaining about them, I don't see why he should, because those appointments in themselves change nothing in the management of the nation. It's something that would support the party in power to see how well they can manage their resources, get more resources, human resources, financial resources, intellectual resources to to engage in the presidential election. That's how I see it. When it concerns the whole nation, their appointment changes nothing in good governance, in the general management of the nation. So as far as I'm concerned, it's nothing to worry about. It doesn't give a negative perception in any way. So I guess when the president was looking at those that are manning the structures of the CPDM around the country, he probably realized that there were some spaces that needed to be filled with people we could trust, and that's why he did it. And I don't see any reason why that should cause a problem. During these elections, people are looking at the candidate they're going to vote for. They're looking at the program they're going to look for. They're looking forward to what the new government will bring to them, what the new president will bring to them as solutions to their problems. You know, how you get there is not important, but what you should try to do, whether the CPD or the opposition party, you should try to convince people, because people have genuine problems and they're looking for genuine solutions to those problems. You can put anybody you like, but they're not interested. They want to see who can solve their problems. If by putting people in the central committee, that will help to clear the debt in Yaoundé and provide electricity, water, health, and good schools and so on, they are welcome. But if that's not going to change any of those, then it's not important. Now is the time to find out who can solve our problems. That's the bottom line. So what the population should be asking the CPDM is, what are the problems that you have identified? Which of the problems are you going to solve? Show us proof that for the last 40 years you were able to solve problems. Convince us that if we do give you the mandate again, we'll solve the problems. And then go to the opposition and ask the same questions, and then vote that person who will solve your problems. And of course, the opposition, the general population knows that, the CPDM is thinking out of the box now. The CPDM is more progressive, and everybody knows that there's this thing called the third option, which is coming, which will actually solve the problems of the nation. And what is the third option? The third option is vote for Biya, who is going to put in place a government of technocrats and entrepreneurs who know how to solve problems, and our problems will be effectively solved. It's no longer an issue of you are made a minister because you went to NM, you are made a minister because you are a professor. We have seen over 40 years that doesn't work.
Your Grace, Nkea, I want you to clarify public opinion on the issue of the church and politics. There's been a lot of debates about the church and politics, pastors and politics, with some holding firm to the idea that the bishop should not talk about politics. The pastors should not do politics. They should not talk about politics. They should concentrate on preaching the word, praying for the Christians, and so on.
This is a very thorny issue, but I think it is characterized by a lot of ignorance. There is what we call the social teaching of the Catholic Church. And that social teaching is not today. Even going back, not very far, if you go to the Second Vatican Council in 1965, and you look at the post-conciliar document, Gaudium et Spes. Gaudium et Spes talks about the church in the modern world. And the church in the modern world has to act as the conscience of the society. The church does not do party politics. The church does not, and the members of the clergy are not allowed to get into party politics, to belong to political parties. But the church has the obligation to be able to look at society and point out the things that are going on that are not correct. This is the obligation of the church. That is why the church exists. So to tell me not to talk about the road to womb is to tell me not to be a pastor. Because that is why I exist. That is why I chose this vocation. God called me to be able to do this. And therefore, when we talk about the church not doing politics, it is a way of speaking. It's people who don't understand and people who don't know the church's role in the modern world, as stated in Gaudium et Spes and other documents. If you look at the way Pope John Paul II opened up modern tendencies to Eastern Europe that led to the fall of communism. What is that? That's politics. But it is politics that is not partisan. And therefore, like here in the Bamenda Archdiocese and in all our churches, we don't allow priests or ourselves as bishops to get into political parties or stand on the pulpit and say, vote this party and not this party, vote this person or not this person. We don't do that. That is not the work of the church. But the work of the church is to look at the society, look at the feeling of the people, the cry of the poor, and raise this cry of the poor to the authorities in power. That is our work.
Elections, or the presidential election, will be coming up in October. Should be coming up by October this year. What do you have to tell Cameroonians in general with regards to the forthcoming presidential election?
I think starting from April of last year, 2024, after the National Episcopal Conference meeting in Yaoundé, I insisted, following the mind of the bishops, that every Cameroonian should go and register. Every Cameroonian should go and register and should vote. Because the only way you can express yourself is by voting. So the step 2, whether your vote is valid or your vote is not valid, whether it is stolen or not stolen, that's another aspect. We'll get to that aspect. Let us start from the basics. Go and register. And vote with a free conscience for the person you think will be able to run your country. This is what we are calling, the church is calling. And as I say, it is not my personal opinion. It is what our conference as bishops are looking into, and this is what we think. People should express themselves in the ballot box and not be talking only along the corridors. This is my first point. The second point is that we are also calling on the governing bodies that organize these elections to be as fair and transparent as possible, so that the people should believe in the elections. The elections should be credible. So ELECAM or whichever authorities are controlling elections should ensure that the people's votes are respected and that the elections are free, they are fair, they are transparent.
Thank you so much for your time and for the insight and wisdom you've shared with us in this edition of the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babila, and thank you for taking the trouble to come to Bamenda, where some people still fear to come. But as my last remark, people should not fear to come to Bamenda. They should come to Bamenda, and the more people come to Bamenda, the more they encourage us who are here to be able to continue living and to rise above these difficulties that we have talked about. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you so much for your kind attention. God bless Cameroon. Goodbye.